good evening. Welcome to the programme. A couple of gents here today, hand-picked for the task of welcoming Steve Bruce to Sheffield Wednesday. His official unveiling was this afternoon. I've been along there, along with the media world, and we'll have an interview that I recorded earlier with Steve Bruce during the show tonight. But I say that the guests virtually hand-picked. They couldn't be more appropriate. There's an old adversary of Steve. In fact, he asked me to pass on his regards to Chris Turner, the former Sheffield Wednesday goalkeeper and manager, and of course Steve Bruce and Chris Turner crossed swords quite famously at Wembley in 1991, and Brucey wasn't keen to be reminded of that today. And Paul Hurst. Now Steve Bruce gets underway. His first game is at Ipswich Town on Saturday, and the former Ipswich Town manager, along with several other clubs, Paul Hurst. Welcome to the studio.
Good evening.
And thank you for coming in. It's a debut for you. I know you were concerned that the previous occupant of that chair from a week ago might still be sitting there.
Yeah, Paul Warne. It's probably got a bit busier time tonight with the transfer window, but I'm not sure me and Chris can talk as much as what perhaps Paul can.
Well, we thought he'd still be there. I thought when I came
we were looking for him.
Yeah, talking about the transfer window, we'll keep across that as well with James in part two, and I think already 3 new players arriving under Steve Bruce's watch at Hillsborough, and no news is good news on the Sheffield United front following the John Fleck West Ham talk. No developments, at least as I came into the studio this evening, and it'd be a damn good window for Sheffield United if they keep the status quo on top of the signings they've made. So, Steve Bruce, connections. We know about yours, Chris. Paul, any career connections there?
Come up against him as managers. He brought Hull to Grimsby Town for a friendly, and they're doing very well. And then earlier this season, it was one of the early games. We played at Portman Road. I got a 1-1 draw with 10 men, which was a great result and probably one of my better results that I had while I was there. So, you know, I'm sure I couldn't get a much more experienced manager for Sheffield Wednesday, and I think myself and a lot of fans, you know, living in the city, a lot of friends who are Wednesday fans will be pleased that he's now in place and ready to start working with the team.
And that underlines the point that you're both lifelong Owls. Yourself, Paul,
yeah.
And probably you grew up watching this fella in the Wednesday goal, did you?
Yes, I've certainly seen Chris a few times, yeah.
Yeah.
And that famous final, as you say. So, yeah, Sheffield Wednesday through and through.
Yeah, that's referenced in the Steve Bruce interview coming up that day. Great day for Wednesday. But what it does mean is a manager's coming in of some stature who knows and remembers Wednesday being a power in the land.
Well, I heard his interview today, Alan, the early parts of it, and the reasons why he's come to the club, and was from the Wembley playoff final a couple of years ago, and I was there myself as a supporter, and the support that day was unbelievable. And I think whatever club you are against Sheffield Wednesday that day, you must look round, as he said, and think that's a big club. Yeah. And I think I wish Stevie was coming 2 years ago, when there was a lot more finances better for him 2 years ago. What's been spent in the last 2 years, but hopefully the owner can get the finances
back on an even keel
for when Stevie in the summer.
Yeah. It's a different profile of appointment as well, radically different. 2 left field appointments previously, both from abroad. One did ever so well, Carlos Carvalho, and the second one it didn't work out. How important is it, Paul, for you that they've gone back to a traditional and very established British manager here? Yeah,
I mean, it's difficult. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter who's in charge if you're winning games. And like I said, Carlos did extremely well, and last time out, it just wasn't quite working. And I think, again, through knowing Sheffield Wednesday fans and speaking to them, some of the frustration was more, they didn't feel he was getting enough dialogue. So there wasn't an understanding now, whether that was misinterpretation or not clear on exactly what is happening at the football club. I think I listened to the same interview that Chris just said, and already, you know, I think Steve's making it clear, and I'm sure there'll be clear lines of communication, and that's what fans want to know. You know, they want to know what's going on. whereas there seemed so much uncertainty about whether players were being sidelined, frozen out, was it because of contracts, all of these things. And I think if the manager came out and actually just said, look, I don't fancy him, or I'm going to go with younger players, whether we agreed with it or the fans did, they would have been a little bit happier and a little bit more understanding of the situation.
He's certainly very skilled in communication, Steve Bruce, whether it be in the dressing room or with the media, I think.
Of course, yeah. I mean, he's very relaxed. He's had his time away, and he said it's kind of like a drug to him, and that adrenaline's back. As he said, it's a big club with the fans, and I'm sure he'll want to bring success to Sheffield Wednesday.
He wouldn't need it financially, I'm sure. So he's in there for the right reasons, Chris.
It's like players when the vast amounts of money that players earn today, they still play for the love of game of football, and management is exactly the same. It's secondary because you want to play. But you can't play because you're too old. You want to be a coach stroke manager. Steve manages how he used to play with his heart on the sleeve, and he manages like that. And he will tell the supporters not always what they want to hear, but he'll give it with honesty and with experience. And you couldn't want a better, more experienced manager for a big club, sat in the Championship for a long time, and you're wanting to get out. And if you're the owner, and you've got to give credit to Mr. Chansiri, that he's picked a manager that's got a great track record of getting out of the Championship. And as Steve said today, he didn't have a great deal of money at Birmingham, and he didn't have a great deal of money at Hull, and he's got to wheel and deal and find one or two players, maybe from lower down, that can step up and become a bit of an instant hit. And he's got a great track record. And I think, when you're appointing a manager, if you can have the fans on your side from day one, you've got a chance, or more than a chance. And by appointing Steve, I think it's probably, might be wrong, but I think it's the biggest appointment since Ron Atkinson, in my opinion. That they're bringing somebody to the club that's got stature and had success. And if Steve can I think he'll utilise these 3 months that's left of this season. Obviously, try and win as many games as possible, but he'll be taking a massive eye, putting an eye on rebuilding in the summer.
Similar stature and style to Big Ron. I was talking to Steve Ellis, the revered snapper around today, and he felt that he had a similar feeling about this appointment, and you've just alluded to that. And mentioning the communication with the supporters that Paul made, it's easier for a manager to do that if he's got a handle on everything, including the transfers. And the feeling was that the previous managers didn't have a total handle on that, whereas I think Steve Bruce has actually said today, I'll have the final say on transfers. How important is that?
I think it's crucial. I mean, football has changed, and there are a lot of people or titles. It's head coach, so you are dealt the players. But for me, if you want to play a certain way, there's then got to be a really close relationship between, if it's you and the head of recruitment, because it's no point in bringing in wingers. You don't want to play that way, and that's just a basic example. But I think someone like Steve Bruce and his staff, with Stephen Clemens, Stephen Agnew, they know football. They'll know exactly how they want to set up and how they want to play. So let them be the people that identify the players. Of course, they'll need some help with that, but it's crucial. And I think Chris just mentioned about this next 3 months or so. I think that's one thing he's probably got on his side. I think it's fair to say, don't see Sheffield Wednesday, getting in the playoffs. And I don't see him getting drawn into a relegation battle. So he's got a bit of time. He'll still want to win games of football, of course he will. But to assess the squad, so when it comes round to August, or even the summer months, of getting that squad that he wants with finances, whatever's available to him, he can hopefully start the season off well, and there'll be an upsurge and more enthusiasm from the fans, looking forward to hopefully a positive season.
Yeah, it's a good period for him. In some ways, a season could drift meaninglessly in terms of the league position, but invaluable for Steve Bruce. And how much change do you feel longer. How big a job is this in terms of timing, and how much change is needed? Chris?
It's a really big job. There's no doubt about it. And Steve, even though he's been away for a period of time, his two coaches were in. He will have been watching the games. He'll know the players, because a high number of the players, everybody knows what they've done in the game, and the strengths and weaknesses. But you've got to be totally honest. The recruitment at Sheffield Wednesday in the last 2-3 years has been woeful, and nobody knows who's been bringing the players in. I don't think sometimes the manager knew. They spend a lot of money on players who've hardly appeared. The wage bill, which was reportedly a few weeks ago, something like £564,000 a week, a wage bill of 29 million. I mean, these are obstacles. You can say what you want, but these are obstacles that Steve's got to overcome in the coming months, year ahead, to get over. And it's like any football club. The biggest thing is recruitment, and managers are judged on that. And I'll just repeat that Steve's got a great record with recruitment of bringing players into championship clubs. So I'm hoping that he's got full charge of it.
It appears so, and it requires some old-fashioned wheeling and dealing by an experienced man, doesn't it, who's got his hand, and that means selling players or offloading players as well as bringing them in.
You've got to appreciate it's very difficult to sell players. When you're not successful, it's very difficult. When you are successful, it's easy to sell, but you really don't want to sell. But other clubs want your players. Now, I can't imagine there's a big queue of people queuing up at Hillsborough at the moment to take the players off the club's hands. One, because they're not performing great, and two, the wages that they're on, and so it's going to be hard.
But there's a lot of contracts out in the summer.
That's what I was just going to say, and on that, I heard him say it's a clean slate for everyone, which I'm sure he does mean, but at the same time, there might be one or two decisions that are taken out of his hand because of finances, because some of the big contracts, again, that Chris just mentioned, of people being out in the summer. But at least that should give him, a little bit of freedom to, as you say, wheel and deal, which he's very good at.
Okay, but it was a bright and optimistic day down at Hillsborough today. Everybody was cheerful. I think everybody had the sense that this was a turning point for Sheffield Wednesday, back towards some good days, as long as people are patient about it and recognise...
Patience is not a big thing in football.
It doesn't go hand in hand with the club of Wednesday size, does it? But
No.
it isn't a quick fix. And, hopefully everybody recognises that. And it'll be, as I said in my column last week, a Brucey bonus if success comes any earlier than maybe 2 years hence, really. So let's catch up with the man himself, as I had the pleasure of doing a little earlier today at Hillsborough.
Delighted to be back in work, and I couldn't have wished for a better club than Wednesday to come back into. It's had a few problems over the last 18 months or so, but once I got the phone call and got talking to the chairman, then I thought long and hard, but the size of the club, the nature of the club, the beast of the club ticks all the boxes. So I'm delighted to be given the opportunity. I'll work as hard as I possibly can now to try and turn around the fortunes of everything. It's not going to be easy, we know that. Not going to be easy at all, but let's roll our sleeves up and get stuck into it.
You're well aware of the potential of this club because you were an adversary at one time. Thinking back to 1991, you were in the Manchester United team, beaten by Sheffield Wednesday at Wembley.
I had a stinker that day, and Sheffield Wednesday beat us long and easy in the end, I think, and if I can remember rightly. So I witnessed it firsthand again a couple of years ago when we played them at Hull, and the support they had that day was just, I don't think I've seen an end bounce at all at Wembley like that in all my years. So that set the pulses racing a little bit to think, if we can get this moving and we can get it where it wants to be. We all know Wednesday is a huge, big football club, and that's the attraction. The attraction is, can I be the one that can turn it round and put the fortunes? They very nearly got there a couple of years ago. Since then, it's been sort of a downward spiral. We must stop that and get ourselves back where we want to be.
One of so many clubs at this level that are big clubs that want to be where they think they should be. That's the size of the challenge, isn't it?
Well, we all want to be in the Premier League. you know, in a club of this stature and the club of the support it has, then it's got every right to want to be there, and that's what we demand, and that becomes the difficulty. You know, sometimes you can be at a smaller club without the expectation and find it a little bit easier, like, for instance, a Bournemouth or a Hull when I took them there, you know. So, you know, but if I can be the one that can turn the fortunes round, then the rewards will look after itself, because we have the support that'll thrive in the Premier League, and that's got to be the aim.
And finally, in the short term, what's your policy to have a look at everybody?
Yeah, I've said that this morning.
A lot of contracts out in the summer.
Yeah, I've said that this morning. There's a lot of contracts and there's big decisions to be made, and I've said to everybody, you know, what's happened in the past, I'm not interested in. I'll wipe the slate clean with everybody. They've got to now try and impress myself, the ones out of contract, try and get a new one, and of course there'll be fallers along the way, but hopefully there'll be a lot of successes as well.
Playoffs are still talked about. Is that possible?
Well, you can never say no, can you? You know, it's going to be difficult. I'm not going to try and talk bull, but it is going to be difficult. But that's got to be the hope for everybody concerned. Let's hope we can do it.
Can I be the one? I think is the essence there of Steve Bruce. Quite realistic about a possibility that you completely discount, I think, in terms of the playoffs. Chris, but you could be pleasantly surprised. You never know. And Paul?
No, I think it's a massive asset.
It is a big asset. It's not so much Wednesday having an unbelievable run of form, which can happen. It's teams above who are already in those places to have a catastrophic last quarter of the season. There's a big gap, and you know, I think going this season, the decision that's been taken to bring Steve in possibly halted the club from possibly getting drawn into relegation.
It certainly lifted everybody.
It lifted everybody.
Even before he was in the building.
Even before he was in the building, and the points have been. I mean, Lee Bullen did a great job for 2 or 3 games and got I think 6 or 7 points, which were vital at the time, and has now given good breathing space between the bottom and to attack the playoffs. But I think it's all about getting the run of form going, ready for the real start. Our pressure, as they say, for gaining promotion would start next August.
Ipswich away, bottom of the table. You're one of a couple of managers that have presided over that, and Paul Lambert's there at the moment. And you know, I know it won't give you any satisfaction that nothing's changed really.
No, I mean, what has changed is he's brought some new players in January, which I have to say, I'm not saying exactly the same players, but that's something I would have looked to have done. You know, it was questioned about how many changes I made, but in all honesty, they were needed because quite a few players had left before I arrived. We then lost 3 in that window that were big players and proved extremely difficult to replace. So I think there's naturally a turnaround needed at that football club. But as you said, Paul's found it equally difficult to put points on the board. I think they're now at a point where there are like almost those must-win games. But what is, I think, keeping them in with a chance is the form of the others around them. You know, obviously one of our
Reading
teams, and Rotherham. You know, feel for Paul. So that gap's not really getting any bigger, despite not really picking up too many points. So I think it's a really interesting game.
Winnable for Wednesday, sure, certainly.
I think you know both teams will feel they've got a really good chance of winning that game.
Yeah, talk about Rotherham in part 2 because you played forever there. It was your only club. Fantastic achievement these days for anybody to do that. And we'll talk about your management career as well, because if anybody deserves to get back in the game speedily, it's you. I was just reminded myself of that today and the promotions you've had at non-league level and bringing clubs into the league. And also, Steve Bruce, of course, you played in the same Manchester United team pretty early in his career at Old Trafford, didn't you? So
yeah, he came at the latter end of my time at Manchester United. He probably came around about January time, 88. Where he came into the team that finished second in the league. Yeah,
so we've got all that to look forward to. James with a roundup, all the rest of the sporting scene, and we'll keep an eye on the transfer window. And with these two guys, do rejoin us in 5. See you then.